From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Wednesday, June the 11th, 2025. Israel's Knesset held a special session this evening honoring the visiting president of Argentina, Javier Milei, which included bestowing upon him the Genesis Prize. This is the first time the award, which is sometimes referred to as the Jewish Nobel, has been given to a head of state. The Genesis Prize Foundation wrote that it had chosen Milei for his unequivocal support of Israel during one of the most difficult times since the founding of the Jewish state. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke of Milei at the Knesset this evening, calling him a true friend of Israel, telling him thank you for standing by us in the battle against the forces of darkness. Milei himself addressed the Knesset tonight as well, where he announced making good on a promise he made last year that Argentina will move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in 2026, and reiterated his support for Israel, saying Argentina stands by you in these difficult days. Unfortunately, he said, the same cannot be said about a large part of the international community that is being manipulated by terrorists, he said, and turning victims into perpetrators. As we reported to you yesterday, Milei met with Israel's President Isaac Herzog in Jerusalem and later with Netanyahu. His first stop after arriving in Israel was the Kotel, the Western Wall in Jerusalem's Old City, where he offered a prayer for the hostages, and today met with released hostages and relatives of victims of the October 7th Hamas massacre, all who have ties to Argentina, as well as with family members of hostages still held in Gaza, including Ruth Strom, the mother of hostage Eitan Horn, an Argentinian-Israeli dual citizen. Milei telling the group, I want you to know that I defend you in every forum and every place. I want to be clear that I will continue fighting for the cause and that we will never abandon you. Axel Wanisch, Argentina's ambassador to Israel, writing, it is a source of pride to know that Argentina with Milei is on the right side of history. The 55 hostages who remain held captive by terror group Hamas in Gaza have now been held for 614 days. Turning now to here in the U.S., the Homeland Security Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Intelligence held a hearing today on addressing the rise of anti-Israel extremist groups and their threat to U.S. national security. Among those who testified, Senior Vice President of Counterterrorism and Intelligence at the Anti-Defamation League, Robert Siegel, who spoke of the critical need to condemn and confront anti-Semitism without hesitation.
Despite years of warnings and mounting data, anti-Semitism and the violence that it animates continues to be dismissed, minimized, and politicized. Too many families are asking the ADL, is it safe to be Jewish in public? And while Jewish communities are strong and resilient, they cannot be expected to bear this burden alone. We need leaders to condemn anti-Semitism without hesitation. The federal government has the tools and the responsibility to act.
And members of Congress yesterday from both sides of the aisle joined with officials from the Israeli embassy for a vigil to honor Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky, staffers at the Israeli embassy who were murdered outside an American Jewish Committee event held at the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington on May the 21st. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who led the gathering on the steps of the Capitol, along with Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, said we must continue to stand with and protect our Jewish brothers and sisters and condemn this senseless violence and the rhetoric that directly aids and abets it. AJC CEO Ted Deutsch called the gathering a powerful show of support for the Jewish community following the recent anti-Semitic attacks in Washington, D.C. and Boulder. Gathering, he wrote, in the heart of our democracy sent a clear message of solidarity. Such acts of pure hatred demand a unified response, and this gathering embodied the defiance and resilience we must show together. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Wednesday, June the 11th. At 7 o'clock, David Harris speaks with Auburn University basketball coach Bruce Pearl to discuss being a proud Jew and outspoken defender of Israel and his recent trip to the Jewish state. At 7:30, Rabbi Ammiel Hirsch looks at the story of Samson and the Talmudic teaching that examines 3 elements of true strength. At 8, Robert Siegel discusses the complicated relationship between universities and the federal government with Professor Arjun Appadurai, Michael Roth, and Professor Stephen Trachtenberg. At 9, Frederick Lawrence is on L'chaim. At 10, it's the ILTV's Insider. At 10:30, an encore of the news. And coming up next, it's Thinking Out Loud. And that's the JBS News Update for Wednesday, June the 11th, 2025. I'm Teisha Bader. Am Yisrael Chai.